Thank you everybody for coming to our third community forum. I'm holding the Albuquerque Police Department accountable. I want to ask the pastor of the Mennonite Church to come up. We're really grateful that the Mennonite Church offered their space tonight. So Anita Amstutz, Reverend Anita Amstutz, thank you.
Hi everybody, I just wanted to welcome you tonight to the space and to let you know that tonight it is a meeting house. You know, it is a place for all people of all faiths and every belief to be here and be in a place to talk about the ongoing violence in our community and the fear and grief that has raised up for us. So I'm glad you're here tonight and I hope you feel welcome. I will need to slip out because we do have services tonight, but I invite you to stand and just by way of getting to know each other, perhaps turn to the person next to you and just say peace or salam or shalom and welcome each other to this place tonight.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. There's some cameras already on, and someone asked if they could audio record this. As, we're assuming since it's a public meeting, that's okay, but we want to ask if anybody does not want to be recorded or does not want to be photographed. Please let us know. Okay, when recording is happening and it's okay as far as we know.
All right, so we're really glad to see so many people here again for this community forum. We're hoping tonight, as a community, we can talk about, if you want to have a side conversation, there's space out in the lobby, and you can do that, but in this forum, if people could listen to this who are, we have different folks who will speak tonight, but if you want to have a side conversation, there's a lobby out there, and there's bathrooms down this hallway. You see where the ramp is? Go to the right, there's bathrooms down there. But for tonight's forum, we're hoping to end within 2 hours. So that's our hope. And so we have a lot of facilitation like we had the last meeting. And we're hoping tonight that we can talk about everything that has unfolded in the last couple of weeks. Because there's been so much happening in this window of time. So we want to bring people up to date with accurate information. And we also want to talk strategies. Because there's a lot of different tactics people are working on. And we may not all agree on those tactics, but it's helpful to know what each other is doing and to give people a chance to plug in. So if there's something that they're really passionate about, you can meet other people who want to work on that as well. So that's our goal tonight, to give up-to-date information and then to talk about our tactics and strategies so that we can move forward. And again, if you want to have a side conversation, please go outside because it's very hard to hear when people do that. I'm talking to you, Charlie and Ken. Side conversations outside. I love you guys. But yeah, feel free. There's other rooms if you need to, but it is hard to hear when people have side conversations.
So we're going to do what we did at, what we've done in the past is called progressive stack. So as people raise their hands, the folks that are keeping track of that will be thinking of folks who usually get to speak less. Right? In our public society, men get to speak more or take more space than women. Folks that we call white folks get to take up more space than folks we call people of color. And there's a lot of those things. So the stackers are going to take that on. If there's any problem with that, please feel free to come and talk to me after the meeting. I'll be more than glad to listen to you and talk with you about how that went if you have any problems with that. And I think that's it for the progressive stack part. We just want to make sure that we balance out people's voices in here in a way that they're not balanced outside of here.
So our progressive staffers are Darcy and Caroline, so make sure you get their eye and raise your hand, and then they can write down who you are, what you look like, and then will be passing the mic. And we are going to cap how many minutes people can speak so that we can hear from as many people as possible. So Ray here, if you want to raise your hand. Ray is our timekeeper. This is, again, if you read the old forums, this worked really well to include a lot of voices, but not spend a lot of time when someone gives long speeches and we can't get through the agenda. So we will cap you at 2 minutes. Okay, but before we begin with that part of the meeting, we did want to acknowledge that there are people who are particularly affected by violence by the Albuquerque Police Department. And if you've seen the DOJ report, or just a lot of people in the community know this, that there are particular people who are really impacted. And those include homeless people, people with mental illness, sex workers, youth, people of color. There's been a lot of racial profiling.
Native Americans.
So sometimes those are voices that some of those voices are not here, or some of those people are here but don't feel comfortable getting up and talking about what it's like to be homeless and interact with the police, or what it's like to have mental illness and interact with the police. But I'm happy that we do have someone who, before we begin, just as part of the acknowledging those most impacted by the violence, I'd like to ask Adrian to come forward and just talk for a moment about the issue of the fact that our people with mental health problems are really impacted by what the Albuquerque Police Department has done.
Thank you. I'm grateful to have the microphone tonight. I'm going to throw some numbers at you really quick. We cannot talk about violence in our police department without talking about mental health. Part of the reason that we have one of the most violent police departments in the nation is that we have one of the worst mental health care systems in the nation. New Mexico closed 60% of its mental health care beds, psychiatric beds, between 2005 and 2010. The number of beds we had in 2005 was woefully inadequate, and we reduced that by 60%. We have 171 public psychiatric beds in this state, in all of New Mexico. 171. There are, now some of these are national statistics. There are 216,000 mentally ill and homeless people in the U.S., and about 400,000 mentally ill and incarcerated people in the U.S. So that represents an enormous population of people. You may know that Cook County Jail in Illinois and the Los Angeles County Jail are the largest providers of mental health services in the U.S. So this is a national problem, but it is particularly acute here in New Mexico. A person who is mentally ill and homeless is 7 times more likely to interact with a police officer than with any mental health professional. A psychiatrist, a social worker, any person. One of the things I've heard some grumblings from police officers. We're being asked to do things that we are not qualified and trained to do. I absolutely agree. We are asking our police officers to be mental health care professionals. The sad fact is that's where we are. That is the entry point into what abysmally inadequate facilities and treatments we have in this state. Apparently, the last number I heard, about 1/3 of Albuquerque police had crisis intervention training. That's the training that we've developed that's intended to provide some level of understanding or human consideration in a mental health crisis. Last time I called for a crisis intervention police officer for a friend of my daughter's who was at my home. 11 police officers showed up. I asked every one of them. None of them had had crisis intervention training. None of the officers at the killing of Mr. Boyd had crisis intervention training. So we have enormous gaps in both our police department and in our mental health treatment. So we can't address one without the other. So these explosive situations are not going to change without a complex community response. So I'm grateful that you've offered me the opportunity to talk. I'm so grateful that you all are paying attention to this. And on behalf of my youngest son, who would never respond appropriately to a command or to, God forbid, anybody he doesn't know touching him, I hope that we can make some changes so that he can be safe. Because, with an IQ of 70 and a severe mental illness, he's not going to react the way somebody expects him to react. And that needs to be changed. So, my battle cry, always, there are no disposable people. We do not have disposable people. We all matter. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing what we're going to do next.
So we want to acknowledge that there have been people who have worked on this issue for decades. And some of you are in the room, and some of you have had family members killed by the Albuquerque Police Department. And so we want to recognize those of you who've done that. And what we'd like to do now is talk about what's happened in these last few weeks, because a lot of new people have joined in this movement, and we have this window of things that are happening fast. So we thought we'd just show some pictures and bring people up to date on what's happened in just 3 weeks' time, again recognizing that there's been years of work that's led us to this moment that we're at today. Okay. So, okay. And then I'm going to have David joining in a moment to talk about where we're at as well, but let's review. Can you go ahead and hit the enter button? Okay. So, in these last 3 weeks we had over 1,000 people. Probably many of you were there on March 25th, just after the video was released of Mr. Boyd being killed. Was there some pictures there? Go ahead. And part of that was that we marched to, part of it is we marched to the Albuquerque Police Department headquarters, and we were there for a while. This has become a popular protest site, but that's from the 25th. And that got the attention of Anonymous, who then called for a second protest, and they started dropping their notes around town. I found that in the Walgreens, on the floor of the Walgreens. That same week, the Police Oversight Commission had a committee hearing, and I've been told that they never had more than 4 people from the public come. We had 40 people come and give public comment. Then that Sunday, the protest that was called by Anonymous was a massive protest. It went more than 11 hours with no act of violence, except on the behalf of the police department, which showed up in riot gear and tear gas, not only protesters, but bystanders as well. And that definitely got us into the international news. There's an aerial shot. The protesters went, from downtown University to the Snake March again for 11 hours that went on. And then many of you were at the first community forum the day after that protest at the Peace and Justice Center. We had more than 170 people there, and we did a participatory democratic forum where we made our list of demands. Just a couple days later, a man was shot in the head in the South Valley by law enforcement, and immediately people found out, and we held a protest right across from the crime scene while they were cleaning up the blood from his head wound. And that same night, there was a vigil where Mr. Boyd was killed up in the foothills. And then that Friday, we had 4 of us met with the Deputy Chief of Police and the Commander Gunterman to talk about the massive militarized force against the nonviolent protesters. And we asked them to stop that and to no longer show up in riot gear and tear gas us, but instead to just act as if they tell us their concern was the safety of the protesters, they're concerned about our safety. So we asked them then to do traffic control, and that the best thing they could do is that we were going to continue to take the streets, but that they could direct traffic away from us. And that day we had a protest. There was our next street protest, and the police actually did do traffic control. They did not come and riot gear. They did not tear gas us. That Monday was a city council meeting. We had worked with Ray Garduno, who cleared most of the agenda so that we could just talk about the Albuquerque Police Department. It was a record 5 hours of public comment, more than 150 people that spoke. There were more than 300 people that showed up. Every seat was taken. They had an overflow room on the 9th floor, and this picture shows people outside. They had to set up giant screens for us to watch the city council meeting outside. It was the largest attended city council meeting. That Thursday, the Department of Justice finally released its findings after 18 months. I don't know if it's coincidence that we were having mass protests and packing meetings, but they did release, and we had a community press conference to give our response. That same day, the Police Oversight Committee had their monthly meeting. Again, they never had more than about 4 or 5 people attend, and we had about 30 people give public comment. And at that meeting, I asked them to resign en masse. Friday, or if you could go back. Friday, there was a meeting with the Attorney General, Gary King. Some of the people in the room were part of that meeting, and David's going to tell us what came out of that meeting. Then Saturday, we had a training about how to do street protests in a way that's safe, nonviolent, also a legal training on know your rights, and updates on what was unfolding. And then we went back out in the streets on the 12th. We had another protest. This is a picture of us at the district attorney's office. She wasn't available that day, so we left messages on her door about what we thought about her not indicting a single officer that killed someone. And then this past Tuesday, half of the Police Oversight Commission resigned. In 3 weeks, we did that much together as a community. Yeah, we're talking more about what we did as a community and the successes that we've had. So I'm going to ask David Correa to come up and bring us up to date on, those were just some quick pictures in community work. He's going to bring us up to date on the DOJ, a meeting with Attorney General King, and he has written, we have handouts of his report on, it's called a People's Guide to the DOJ Findings, a Reader's Guide to the DOJ Findings. So if you need a simple guide to read that 50-page document, it's out here on the table. But I'll give it to David.
Thank you, Sally. So I was asked to just give an update about what's happened since the release of the DOJ report and what's coming up in the near future. There's also a lot of people in this room that could give the same update, so if I forget anything, please interrupt me. So when the DOJ report was released on Thursday, the DOJ team was in town for the rest of that week and over the weekend, and they met with Mayor Barry's cronies, and also met with a few other people. They also met with DA Kerry Brandenburg. They briefly met with Attorney General Gary King. So on the Friday after the DOJ report was released, I attended a meeting set up by Ralph Arianes of LULAC with Gary King. So if you're interested in what Gary King, who's been largely silent on all of this, has to say, I just published a piece this afternoon in La Higuerita. If you're not familiar with that, I can give you the link. We've been chronicling this for the last, well, for the last 3 years, but more intensely in the last 3 weeks. And so I think it's useful to give you a brief update. So this is what Gary King told us, and let's hold him to this. First, he said, if the DOJ doesn't pursue criminal charges against any of the cops in their report that the DOJ found to have used unjustified lethal and non-lethal force, then he will. That's what he told us. He will. Well, hopefully, right? He's both a lawyer and a politician, so. But, sorry, all those lawyers. There's a lot of great lawyers. There's Larry here. Ken was there, Charles Arassen was there, there's a few people here that were there. They could help if I miss anything. We demanded help in getting the APD to release all these lapel videos. We said they're just flouting the law. We've had people, Silvio Delangelo has been requesting through the Inspection of Public Records Act for years. He's been requesting access to these videos, and they just ignore this. And King all but told us, well, there's not much we can do, there's not much we can do. We can't compel them to do that. So we said, well, use your office as a bully pulpit. I mean, the ground has shifted under our feet with this report. There's a moral imperative here. And he agreed to use his office as a bully pulpit to demand APD release these lapel videos. That's 6 days ago, and I haven't heard anything. I emailed him the next day and said, how about a press release? Call a press conference. So nothing. If you read the thing or please email Gary King, gking@nmag.gov. gking@nmag.gov, and demand that he do what he says he would do. We were troubled by the fact that Gary King is the chair on the board of the Law Enforcement Academy, and in that capacity they can decertify any officer in the state of New Mexico, and then that officer can never work again as a cop. And they've never done that to any officer who's been found to use unjustified force at APD. They've never done that. And he told us that they're having a meeting, this board is having a meeting on May 15th. I went on the website and it says it's going to be in Albuquerque. Does anyone here have more updated information? It says it's going to be at the APD training facility site in Albuquerque on May 15th. They're going to be reviewing the curricula that Jack Jones, the director of training for the Law Enforcement Academy, created. This is the same person, by the way, who, when the Santa Fe, New Mexican requested a copy of that public document, he said, I'll burn it before I give it to you. He is the person that said evil has come to New Mexico. He's the one that designed the Shoot First curriculum that trains all officers in this state. And in September of last year, Gary King joined the rest of that board to vote unanimously to give that person, Jack Jones, total authority over the development of curriculum for law enforcement in the state of New Mexico. So we have to hold King accountable to that. Were there any other promises, Charles, that King made in that meeting?
No, not that I can think of.
So,
you want to touch on the officers suing the LEA over that curriculum, trying to teach the test?
oh, the cheating on the test.
Class action lawsuit?
Yeah.
Do you want to mention that briefly?
Well, just that I guess a group of officers are suing the LEA for, I guess, firing them concerning teaching to the test, which is basically what they were doing, is telling them you basically teach the test. And then there was another issue involved with that concerning missing weapons. They showed up in Alaska.
Oh, yeah, I saw that report. Okay, so lastly, let's just talk about what the DOJ is doing now. The DOJ, some of you may have received an email from the DOJ. They sent it out to community partners over the weekend, one today. The DOJ team from Washington, D.C. will be back in Albuquerque a week from Monday, on the 28th of April. There will be a private meeting on that day with people who they call community partners. Show of hands, anyone in this room get one of those emails and plan to go to that meeting?
I didn't get the email.
Well, they won't let you. This is how the DOJ works. But they want a private meeting with people that have been a part of their efforts before the release of the report. And then they're going to be setting up public meetings that anyone can go to. They said 3 during the course of the week. And also in the email that I got, which was also a press release, they wanted to point out that you don't have to come to that meeting. The meetings, by the way, are entirely organized around what we want to see in the consent decree. So if you've read the report, there's the report out here from DOJ. I also wrote a summary of the report that's shorter. The report concludes with 46 specific recommendations. And what DOJ is planning to do now and what they've done in these situations in cities like Seattle, Newark, and New Orleans when they've had similar investigations is they enter into these lengthy negotiations that culminate in a legally binding consent decree that may or may not include the appointment of a federal monitor who imposes these, turns these recommendations into practices and policies. And what they want to do that week they're here, the week of the 28th, is meet with people about what we want to see in that consent decree. And so it's critical that we attend those meetings, that we let them know we want that consent decree. You don't have to attend those meetings to weigh in on this, by the way. You can actually contact them via email, and the email that they set up, if someone wants to write this down somewhere, is community.albuquerque@usdoj.gov. Again, it's community.albuquerque@usdoj.gov, or you can call 877-218-5228. USDOJ@usdoj.gov. USDOJ.gov. USDOJ. All right,
David, what's a consent decree?
okay, I'll do that in a second. Let me just get this down. So the other number is 877-218-5228. So the consent decree will be an agreement, a legally binding agreement, in which the city of Albuquerque consents to everything in the decree. Right? This will be the legally binding agreement that the city of Albuquerque will enter into, promising to do what the DOJ wants them to do, and the federal monitor, if one is appointed, will be sure that they do it, right? So this is a legal, if there's a lawyer here that has a better definition. But this is, so in other words, it is a negotiation. The DOJ is negotiating with Barry and Eden. But also the DOJ wants our feedback on this. I should say that, I heard someone say that they don't reply. I want to really encourage you. They're swamped with emails. Okay.
November 2012.
Well, I'm ambivalent about the DOJ involvement. I think that given the place we're at, the only way we're going to be able to make an impact on what that consent decree looks like is to get those meetings, try to bombard them with emails. I will say this, that I talked to one of the teen investigators. I talked to Sarah Lopez on the phone 2 days ago, and she indicated that they're also interested in, their investigation includes those with investigatory authority, for example, such as DA Brandenburg. Right? So so in other words, if you know somebody that has a specific complaint about APD, a particular officer, if you've ever had an encounter where a public official tried to intimidate you around this, if you've been a public critic of APD and anyone affiliated with a department, if the administration contacted you, this happened to me, and I talked to the DOJ about this, and they listened to that. So it's important we do that. So again, watch for these announcements. We will have, if you go to La Jicarita, I will be constantly updating what's been going on. And as soon as they tell us the times, the dates, and the places of the 3 community meetings, I'll have that on La Jicarita so that people can have access to that information. Charles?
I just wanted to say, there's a lot of people that are still in fear of retaliation by APD, and they're afraid to contact the DOJ. There's several of us here that I'm sure that are involved with this and be going to this meeting next week with the DOJ. There's several of us here that I'm sure will give out our email addresses to you if you want to contact us with your questions or your suggestions for the consent decree, and we can get those to the DOJ anonymously.
Okay, great. All right, that's all I have. Does anyone else have an update that maybe I missed that we should make sure we cover? Okay. Okay, again.
I emailed to a bunch of folks a copy of David's summary of the meeting with Dr. King. And if you know people, share them with everybody you can. But it just came out just before I came to the meeting. I pushed it out to the city council. I sent a copy to Barry King, and I also sent it to a bunch of people. A lot of you should have an email and share it with others if possible.
Okay, did everyone hear that? So the last thing I want to say, by the way, a couple upcoming things. On April 22nd, which is Tuesday, the University of New Mexico is holding a panel discussion about police violence on the campus of the University of New Mexico at noon in the Student Union Building. So if you're a student, or if you can get over there, please do. And again, May 15th will be the Law Enforcement Academy Board meeting. I think it's going to be in Albuquerque. Please plan to attend that. And watch out for, in the newspaper or in La Jicarita for announcements about when the DOJ meetings will be held the week of the 28th. Okay, thank you.
We're really appreciative of all of our independent journalists like David and La Jicarita, like The Alibi, like Compass, Liberty, our own media. David was talking about next steps, and to go back to our agenda, we will be at the end talking about next steps, so don't feel like, oh gosh, I gotta remember all this. We will come back to that. The bulk of our meeting is going to be talking about the many different strategies and tactics people are taking. So the DOJ meetings is one way that we can participate. And so we will now turn things over to people who are working on different strategies and tactics. And you'll notice back on this back wall, where there's people sitting and standing, that there's a place to sign up if there's something that you're really passionate about or interested in. So at the end of this meeting, we'll be going over next steps. So there's places for you. But they're all over. I see everything's pointing out. There's what David just talked about, the DOJ meetings. If you sign up, then we know that you need to be notified when they're happening. We want to have good messaging for that. But now a big portion of our meeting is going to be talking about those different strategies and tactics. And so we have different people who are going to be speaking based on their expertise. So
there was an effort made to try to get different people who can, who've been working on or who are starting to work on different tactics and strategies. And what we want to stress as people present these is we may not agree with a particular tactic or strategy. Let's save that. We'll have some time for that. But one of the things too we want to think about is, well, how do we disagree in a way that actually builds more community instead of just creates more divisions? And so how do we have those conversations? So please, if you're disagreeing with somebody, start to think about that. How would I talk to this person so that we have more understanding instead of less at the end of a conversation while we go through the different strategies. And so there are some spaces where, depending on time, we may open up for somebody that may be working on something that we don't have yet, but we know is a strategy. We're a little bit behind, so we might not get to that. So just please bear with us as we try to make sure we get people out of here on time. 11 hours is great sometimes, and sometimes it's not.
what's exciting is right now we feel like people have power. And in those photos I showed you, people have power. And that's why the DOJ is out there, that the people have power, and so we need to really exercise our power. So I'm going to read off the different strategies that people are going to talk to, and then one by one, they'll come up and they'll explain their strategy for a couple of minutes. Then we will open it up after each person for there to be questions or comments, and this is where the stackers and Ben with the mic will come to you and you can respond. But we do want to get through all of the strategies. So we are going to start by talking about the Police Oversight Commission. And that's because on Monday, we know that City Council is going to be meeting at 5 o'clock, and they're going to be talking about a resolution that Gardino and Winter have brought out about the Police Oversight Commission. So that's one strategy we're going to hear from tonight. We're going to hear from people who are working on a Recall the Mayor strategy. There are people who are working on grand jury indictments, so they're talking about that. People who want to work more on street protests, so we'll hear from them about street protests. We know that at a community forum together, we made a list of demands, and so we want to come back and talk. Those demands you're going to hear are folded into some of these strategies, but we'll go quickly over those demands. We have people who want to pack public meetings, like City Council, like POC, like the LEA that David mentioned, so that's a strategy, pack those meetings. We want the videos released as David mentioned. Where are those videos? So people who've been working on releasing the videos. And then media. We've been very frustrated at how media has portrayed things and has portrayed us and how often they refer to elected officials as the official voice and rarely from us. So we want to go on a media strategy. All right, so those are some of the tactics we're going to talk about now. So again, I will ask each of these people working on the strategies, they'll get to explain what they're doing. We'll open it up to question and discussion, then we'll close it and go to the next person. Knowing that tonight we're not going to get into all these strategies in depth. There's 110 people in this room, so we can't do 110 people talking about Police Oversight Commission. But there's a place to sign up and to go after this meeting to work on that. All right, so I will start with the Police Oversight Commission because that is Monday. So I want to ask Andres and Alan. Is Alan here too? No. Okay, so we'll let Andres come up and speak about that.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Andres Valdez, Executive Director of Vecinos United. I'm honored to be here presenting to you today. Our organization, Vecinos United, has pursued a over 20-year struggle on police accountability. And so that's given us an opportunity to look at things a little bit different than some of the people coming brand new into this struggle. And one thing is that we've had the opportunity to look at trends on the way mayors, city councilors, district attorneys, police chiefs have justified the excessive use of force. And let me tell you, all of them are guilty. Every single mayor we've had, every single city councilor we've had is guilty, including the ones that now that we now have as city councilors. Having said this, I think we're in big trouble because our friend, it appears, let me say, our friend Ray Garduño is betraying us. This, what I have here before me, is what's going to be introduced Monday before City Council as solutions to how to fix the problem. Right from the start, I might say that on page 4, line 1, Councilor Garduño and Councilor Bradwinter start by saying that each city councilor representing the district in which a vacancy exists will appoint a member to the new civilian police oversight agency. What's the problem with that? The problem is that city councilors purposely have betrayed us and have really coerced and destroyed the whole process of police oversight. And let me give a few examples. Councilor Don Harris purposely appointed Linda Martinez to the Police Oversight Commission, and he and Richard Berry had her sit on the commission knowing that she had a conflict of interest being part of the fraternal order of police that takes the public stand against civilian oversight. That's your city councilor, and that's why we cannot, that's why I'm asking you to oppose this ordinance. Another example is Councilor Bradwinter, one of the authors of this bill, had Bambi Folk sit on the Police Oversight Commission. Bambi Folk was pretty close, and I think a lot of people here can vouch for this, is pretty close to having the mentality of a Ku Klux Klan person. She, for no reason, would oppose anything police would do. Councilor Garduño, he himself, in creating the Police Oversight Task Force, created a secret selection committee that selected who was going to sit on the task force. They would not let us know who the secret selection committee was. Later on, we found out it was the city council staff. So, having said this, that having city council appoint the police oversight commissioners or the new civilian police oversight agency makes this commission non-independent. We wanted an independent citizens police oversight or civilian oversight mechanism for years, and Councilor Garduño is saying no. And so for this reason, we ask you to oppose Councilor Garduno and Brad Winter's proposal this Monday, most of us will probably be at City Council meeting. The other point I want to point out, and I'll be real brief, it's real important, and it's on page 8 of Councilor Garduno's proposal, line 6F. The chief shall have final authority on discipline. It's been the chief, historically, that has allowed police officers to get away with murder and beat the holy hell out of the people. And Councilor Garduno is proposing this. I'm upset. I think all of us should be upset. We should oppose this thing come Monday. And I'm sorry, one other point. There's a mediation process in here to mediate human and civil rights violations. Does that sound correct? Mediating human and civil rights violations? I should say no. Thank you. Please oppose this.
So we have some really brief questions or comments, and Danny and Rose is first. We got to get the stackers on really quick.
Okay, we'll start with Charles, and then David, and the man in the Oxford shirt, and the man in the short sleeve, in the purple shirt here, and a hat.
Thank you. Oh, check. Hello. Yeah, it's green. Hello. Hello. Just come up here.
Yeah.
All right, I've been involved in working on the POC for, going after them, I guess you could say, for about 3 years. And I'm in agreement with Andreas that we should oppose what they're proposing to do. It doesn't go far enough. And for what points that Andreas has already pointed out. But what we need to do is amend the city charter and to set up either a police commission or a, whatever you want to call it, civilian oversight, civilian review board, whatever you want to call it, so that it is completely taken out of the control of the city council, the mayor, the CAO, the chief of police. It's really the only way. So this, what they're talking about doing here is basically a Band-Aid. The only real changes are that they're going to have funding tied to APD's budget, so that will give the civilian review board that they're talking about here more money. And they're talking about moving, I don't know if you're all familiar on how the system works now. You have a police oversight commission, and you have an independent review officer, and they're completely separate entities. And the oversight commission has no control over the independent review officer, so they're going to, that is one of the good things about this, is that they're going to take that and change it so that the oversight commission does have control over the independent review officer. So there is that. But this, what they're proposing is really a Band-Aid. And we really need a city charter amendment to get a police commission completely out of the control. These people have proven time and time again that they cannot do their duty and their responsibility. I mean, the mayor has shirked his responsibility here, the CAO, the city attorney, the chief of police, whichever one we've had, over and over again. So they've proven that they don't deserve this responsibility. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I was second. Okay, I want to say we can't just oppose this on this. We can't just walk in and say we oppose this.
I have a proposal.
Wait, hold on. Charles, I agree. I think that no matter what happens to reform, right now, according to the city charter, the mayor has authority over the hiring and firing of the chief, and the chief has authority to discipline the police. So no matter what reforms we make, until we take away the ability for the mayor to control the hiring of the chief and the chief to control discipline, then nothing can happen. So, by the way, a charter amendment would require just a majority plus one of the city council. It happens often, frequently happens in terms of charter amendments. And, you know, I would point out, if you read the DOJ report, they're particularly critical of the Police Oversight Commission, and the Police Oversight Commission is a joke and will remain a joke until we get this charter amendment to take away, I mean, as he said on this, every mayor and every chief has ignored any citizen complaints, anything. So I think that the proposal has to be to strip the authority to discipline officers. So to oppose this particular ordinance and then to propose a toughening of the Police Oversight Commission.
Thank you. The proposal for independent citizens police review boards, there's only two real independent models. I'm sorry, should I?
Okay. I don't think there was a question there. I think it was.
Well, there is.
You said, so let the next.
The woman in the meeting in the back.
There is alternatives, however.
Rhea, Rhea, you're next.
I'm sorry, but we don't have a court. Let's kill you.
Hi, my comment.
Oh, well.
Don't stand on the court.
I didn't. Hi, I go by Shorty, by the way. Don't call me by my first name. My comment was going to be along the same regard. If we can't simply, march into a meeting and go, no, we don't want that. They're not going to accept that. We have to have a counter proposal, which means I think we all need to get together here tonight and have a consensus on what is our counter proposal then. Is it going to be a statement of an alternative form of a POC, or is it going to be maybe something he was going to propose, which is that we're going to say, no, we don't want this. What we want is to have this charter amendment, and that's what we're going to stand up for, and we will not accept anything else.
Before anybody speaks, can people sign, I guess people sign up for the three, I guess, proposals? Yes, I need to say at this point, because there is proposals. The proposals are, one, there's only two models of citizen independent police oversight. One is an elected police oversight commission, but it has to have a conflict of interest clause that would prohibit anybody associated with law enforcement to sit on it. This standard does not violate police officers' civil rights because there's already a standard in place for that, and it's called the jury selection process, where they select people that are, where they de-select people that are partial. So having said that, the other model is a jury-style citizens police review board. This one would probably be even more independent, and it's really interesting. Of course, it would serve at an administrative level. I just think that was important to bring up now.
Well, I just wanted to add to what Mr. Valdez said. I've got this law before me. I find it really a terrible document. That also, in addition to giving all disciplinary authority to the chief of police, it gives all policy authority to the chief of police. That if this new Citizens Police Oversight Agency, if it makes policy recommendations, the chief can take it or leave it. Also, it says that if a police officer doesn't want to testify, there's no problem unless the chief of police says there is. Also, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but the ACLU last time introduced a proposal that there be a law forcing the police to release these lapel pins. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what happened. It sounds like they're going to stonewall, they're not going to do it.
I was just going to ask, where can we find a copy of what's going to be proposed? Is that on the City Council website?
Yes.
Okay.
City Council website.
And then I was just going to remind everybody that we're going to get cut off in this discussion in a few more, another 7 minutes or something. But the object is to sign up back here if you want to continue this discussion. so that they can get in touch with you, and you guys can all get together outside of this meeting. So just a reminder on that.
Sound good.
You're next. We have,
Hey, folks, we have a cable going around, so please help it, otherwise it's gonna get stuck.
okay, so just so you guys know, she's speaking, and then Brother James is going to speak, and then Joel's going to speak, and that's who we have on our list. And that's Dakota.
Okay, my name is Ann Casper, retired district judge. And one of the things that we could look at is a model of oversight that's similar to the Judicial Standards Commission. Judges have a lot of power and have special, and also have special concerns and considerations, as do police. But the Judicial Standards Commission is a constitutionally created body. The members to the judicial standards are appointed, but the profession of and who they have to represent are there. They have a special oath of office. They do have subpoena and investigative powers. And it may be that that's what we need to deal with the police, is something using the Judicial Standards Commission as a model.
Thank you.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. The reason why I'm sharing, I'm not from Albuquerque, but the reason why I'm sharing my story with you is so that you would be better armed to put together this civilian task and what have you, to monitor our police officers. I believe that we have some good police officers in Albuquerque Police Department. But among these police officers, you have a very well embedded code of operation, and these operations are run by multi-billion-dollar business organizations outside of the state. Let me explain my situation with you. Last year, I tried to help a homeless lady to get into a hotel so that she can better, deal with her homeless situation. I found out that it was the corporation then takes all your information by request of the police department. Everything that goes into the hotel, they pass it on to the police officer, and then they go into a private computer system and they run your credit check on you. In other words, if you were a deadbeat dad, they inform the police department. If you are a veteran, not in good standing, they report that to the police department. If you have a situation, anything about you, they know everything about you, and all you did is just check into the hotel. Well, I had to sign my name in order for me to help this lady into this hotel. And what happened is that with the cooperation of the police department, the fire department, they threw the lady out less than her contract went in. They threw her out saying that she was using heroin. Now this is what happened, whatever. When this was very important to me, whatever, because you can see, they put me, when I came in to investigate with the hotel manager, they put me in a code. The police officer that responded put me as a code 40. And a code 40 means that I was a dangerous person. And all I was doing was just trying to find out what happened to the lady. And when I asked another police officer what does code 40 means, they said they set you up to be killed. Now, I have another situation that I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to deal with this, because I tried to take it into court, and even I found that the judge was involved in trying to make it so that it was impossible for me to litigate my case. So I just wanted to share this with you to say that this is a little more involved than what we're talking about. We're not just talking about police officers, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar system that's operating this and making it so that it makes it very difficult.
Thank you for
Please listen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother James.
I'm from the state of Arizona. I came through visiting, and I'm going to tell you why I'm visiting real quick. It's because whether you like her or not, I feel that Suzanne Martinez is going to be the 45th President of the United States. I feel it because of the way the situation is moving in our country.
We need to move on. We need to thank you.
Sir, I didn't
With all due respect.
Sir,
We have an order.
Sir, I didn't want to come here tonight. I come here tonight because I felt like it was important for me to share my...
It is. It is.
I won't come back again. Put the mic over there. I promise you, I won't come back.
Come back again. Please come back again. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank Andres for his words, and I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying. I first started working with Andres about 4 years ago on this, and he's absolutely right. And I'm one of those radical leftists that people don't like. But we have to take a look at this is a symptom. Police brutality is a symptom of economic injustice, of a history of racism, colonization, imperialism. And, if we don't address those issues, we're really missing the point here. And I think that's something that we need to do with this. We need to demand, that they address those issues. And of course, the police department can't take care of health care and so on and so forth, mental health care or racism or homophobia or anything like that. But if we demand it, it's out there in the public and people hear it. And then people start to realize that that is the problem. That is the problem, and that police brutality is just a symptom of that. So that's what we need to take the opportunity to do, is to educate the public about that fact. And this is what this struggle is about. The struggle is about, educating people as to what the real issue is. And that's what we've been doing. That's our orientation as a group, as an organization. We support all of these reforms. We're willing to fight for them. We're willing to stand side by side with people. But right now, what we need is unity. And the way we build more unity is by bringing people on board with the knowledge of what's happening. So that's really what I want to say. And thank you very much for letting me say it.
I guess we're getting way I just want to thank everybody. Please let's stand united at City Council on Monday and don't support us. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next strategy. We have some shortage issue going on here with the wiring. So if you're interested in following up with the Police Oversight Commission, please sign up on the back wall so that we can try to figure out how to get everybody interested in that together. I'm looking around. Okay, we're going to go into the grand jury indictments section, and Danny and Ray, I believe, were the ones that were supposed to be doing that part. So if you'd like to, I know Danny and Ray, and then we're just kind of switching up here real quick.
How many minutes for this part? 5 minutes.
I can do it faster. I had a 2-minute plan, so, okay, so we've got lots of investigations going on, and you're wondering why another investigation. Well, here's why. The petition that I put together would allow a state grand jury to look into lots of APD stuff, starting with the Mary Hahn case. The rationale for that... Sorry? Oh, yeah. Especially with the rationale for the Mary... I'm a strategist. The rationale for the Mary Hahn case is because the people who were involved in that case were Perry, Barry, White, all the whole brass of APD was in that room except for Barry, and maybe that's why all those phones disappeared, because I'm assuming that they were all calling him. So that would create the nice thing about a grand jury is it can subpoena straight from the bench, and it could indict people straight from the bench. So the list of APD offenses that I've got on here are the Mary Hahn case, the Jonathan Mitchell case, all the shootings that have taken place since 2010, and then anything else that they pick up along the way so this thing can snowball. My rationale is this. This is not going to happen tomorrow. However, if we get 8,600 signatures, it will happen very shortly after, but it will take some time. However, what this will do is it'll cover every dirty deed that has happened at APD since 2010. Now, I've seen lots of dirty deeds at APD a lot longer than that, but let's just take a mouthful on this one. And I think it'll probably take a couple of years, but there's another strategy I have in mind, and I know there's a petition to recall the mayor. I don't think at this moment that would succeed. I think that we'd be able to get the number of petition signatures. I think that he probably would not be recalled, although it could change. I mean, if the media actually starts grabbing onto some of this stuff, maybe that could change. But the point here is that after all of these investigations into everything at the upper levels of APD, including Barry himself, because he was in communication with all these people, I'm assuming that it'll be a whole lot more difficult for RJ to get elected to higher office. So that's my ulterior motive. But immediately, what I want to see is that a grand jury look into every aspect of ATD since January 1st of 2010 through today, or through that, and then they'll cover every nook and cranny over at APD. So what I would like to do is, I've got my own little petition going on. I'd like you to put your name, email address, and phone number, and how many signatures you're going to get for us. So I'm going to go pass this around now, and I'll stand for questions.
Your mind's a little different.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Grand jury?
No, not exactly.
Sylvia? Okay. Yeah, Sylvia has a question.
I have 2 points. I think we shouldn't forget also about these alleged suicides that are not really suicides. And I've asked for making an IBRC request for the documentation, the recordings. The other thing, and I'll turn it over to other folks. Let's not focus on just lapel cameras. The police have lapel cameras, the new ones they bought from a taser company. They have infrared cameras, they have helmet cameras, which they first acknowledged during the board killing. And they also record at the area commands the radio transmissions from the radios. And finally, they have the belt recorders. So while they try to sort of condemn the lapels as unreliable, that's not all they have, and I've asked for every one of them, not only the lapel, so keep that in mind.
I'll add very briefly that I'm assuming that some of the things that the grand jury will subpoena is all these recordings.
Okay, and there's also a sign up for grand jury indictments there, as well as recall the mayor, street actions and other things, so don't think we're skipping something because we haven't called you up yet.
My name is Maria Bautista. I appreciate everybody being here today. I'm one of the community advocates. My partner and I were pushed around a little bit in home invasion. Don't worry about it, we're working on it. I have a few issues that are bothering me. One is that all of us see each other, we know each other, we've been together each other, we've marched, and we know who we are. In order to really make this thing work, we have to bring new faces to the community, and I was talking to Sue about that from the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. I think that the City Council needs to see the face of the community. They've seen our faces, and they disregard us and devalue us. It would be really great if one of you could make a commitment to go and bring someone, and I will, from San Mateo and Central, to bring a homeless person, to go and bring people from different parts, from the Southwest Valley, from the people who saw the shootings there, to the City Council meeting. Because the City Council just looks at us and says, oh, it's the same old people. And they do devalue us. So I'd like to see us do a better kind of outreach. Yes, the strategies are great. Yes, we can do all the paperwork, but it's more than that. I was on 4th and Alameda after James' funeral, and I was talking to an older guy and his wife, and he said, where are you coming from? I said, well, we went to a funeral. He says, you mean James Boyd? I said, yeah. He says, you know what? I appreciate everything all you guys are doing for us. They can't come to the meetings. We need to take it to them. We need to educate our community and take it to them. I worked for Andres and with him for a long time. This man walks the streets. We need to walk the streets and bring the community into the process because we are not a real reflection of them. That's all. Just think we need the community.
So I'm going to talk about some grand juries. To me, I've been working on activism on lots of levels for a while, mostly on the national level. I'm really glad to be doing something locally here that I'm passionate about. And ultimately, this issue, the deaths and the things that are coming to the forefront that are really igniting this issue are just, to me, an opportunity to talk about and put some things in place to prevent the institutional corruption that is at all levels of government. So while we have these guys on the run, now's the time to try to organize some of this stuff. So the grand jury that you're talking about here is if we get enough petitions, we can ask, require, okay, the governor's office, or is it local?
It's state.
State, okay. So this, from the state AG?
District, and help me out here, District 2.
Okay. So we can require the Attorney General to convene a grand jury, see the evidence, and potentially put forth indictments. If that kind of thing fails, as it has in the past, or if they get it together and they put together a grand jury of insiders or whatever, and however they've been doing these grand juries that has not been effective, we have a backup plan, and that's what I'm going to present here. Yeah, it's okay. So this is important, and I mean, these do not conflict in any way. What I'm proposing is a way to build an organization now, so that anytime there's corruption that we can identify, laws being broken by officials that we know the attorney generals and the district attorneys are not going to prosecute because they're all in the same club together. The citizens will convene a grand jury and we'll prosecute them ourselves. Okay? In order to be prepared to do that, we've got to start organizing now. We've got to get a couple of things done. We've got to get some committees together on the county level, and we've got to, so it's a process that's going to take some time. But we got them on the run now, and now's the time to do it. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to pass out some flyers so you can get in touch with me and you have some information.
And you can also include that in the grand jury indictments paper in the back if you want to sign up. I just want to point out, there's two kinds of grand juries, and that may be some of the source of confusion. There's an investigative grand jury, which is the kind of grand jury that the district attorney has called in order to investigate the police shooting cases. And that particular type of grand jury cannot return an indictment. All it can do is rule on whether the investigation has been done. I mean, basically, they're instructed to look at this case, but they can't return indictments. The kind of grand jury that can return indictments is called a target grand jury. And that's the kind that there's a provision in the Mexico Constitution that if you get 2% of the registered voters of the judicial district, which is Bernalillo County, and that amounts to, I think, 8,000 registered voters, to sign this petition, then a grand jury must be called, and that grand jury can return indictments. And that's the difference. That's why there's been no police indictments, because it's still left up to the DA with the other kind of grand jury.
Thanks, Bill.
We got a couple of speakers now because we're just trying to keep moving.
I just wanted to say it's great to see all the faces here, and I know we're here in unity. And I know this has been going on for decades, and I know there's many organizations, many individuals as themselves that have organized over this issue for many, many years. In my personal life, racial profiling and mental illness being targeted by police on a daily basis is a reality to me. So that's why I'm here. And I'm sure many of us have those same stories that have a relative that's very close and dear to us. And maybe sometime we weren't so awake as we are now to speak up for them. So I'm glad that we're all here and just to remember who we're doing this for, and just to remember that we want justice for all.
Hi. I want to mention two things. One, let's not put too much faith in the state police investigating cases. It was the state police that fired on a carload of kids in northern New Mexico. And also, on Friday, I attended a Justice for Jeanette rally up in Santa Fe. The woman that was gunned down by a state police officer that said that he feared for his life, that she was trying to back over him. But the video doesn't show that. The video shows her trying to drive away from him and he running alongside, firing 16 shots into the passenger side of the vehicle. So we have a problem that's bigger than APD. And I also want to mention Jonathan Mitchell, the African-American Army veteran that was not killed by the Albuquerque police. He was killed by a vigilante. However, the Albuquerque police played a big part in his death because he was shot in the arm. It was a survivable wound. But yet, when his brother was trying to stop the bleeding and render CPR, the police, came on the scene and stopped his brother from saving him and handcuffed the brother, and then they let Jonathan lie there and bleed to death. So let's keep these cases in mind too. Again, it was not a police shooting, but yet the police played a serious part in his death.
Charles, for what it's worth, it's in the petition that we're calling for a grand jury that Jonathan Mitchell's name is in there and the case is there, so they'll have to investigate that as well.
Thank you.
We're just moving along again for time. So we have another section coming up.
We have three more, so we're going to have Sue and Paul come up and talk about the strategy to recall Mayor Berry.
Yay!
Paul and I have been working independently. So I want to talk about accountability. I know we want the officers involved to get charged, but I also want Mayor Richard Berry held accountable. Do we want accountability for this mayor? So I went on to the internets, and I looked up our city charter, how to recall the mayor, and I've had this piece of paper in my purse, and I know that Paul's been getting signatures, but there's a very precise procedure that you have to follow. Otherwise, and we don't want a bunch of signatures thrown out because we didn't follow it precisely, right? Even if we don't agree with it. So we have to, before we can circulate a petition, we have to cite grounds for misconduct or violations of oath of office. So I've been a little busy, but I finally got a hold of the oath of office the mayor took from the city clerk. And I have that in my purse every day too. I, Richard Berry, do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution. And I'm like, you had me at Constitution. Because the DOJ, right, they said our police department has been unconstitutional. So we got him. We got him. So what I want to do, even if we don't get enough signatures to recall him in an election,
it's another point of pressure, right? And we want to keep up the pressure. So if anybody wants to help with this effort, I'd like to draft a paragraph as to why he's violated the oath of office, and I'd like a lawyer to help with that. Larry, where's Larry? Anyway, so anyway, if you want to help with that, sign up your name and how to reach you, either a cell phone or an email. Thank you.
I didn't know that Sue was independently working, and we need to work together to get this done, obviously. The first step, and believe me, the city is more than uncooperative in this recall effort. The city attorney's office they will give no help whatsoever. Yesterday, I with several members that are here, met with the city clerk. And I turned in, the first step is you have to turn in a petition with 5 names on it of city voters that say that you intend to do a recall of the mayor of the city of Albuquerque. That has been done. We turned in the petition yesterday. We had 20 names on it because anybody knows you need more than just the number that you need, because they will go over them with a fine-tooth comb, and if somebody doesn't live at the address they say, or they're not a city voter or whatever, they'll throw it out. So that's been done. Step 2, and I think this is completely ridiculous, but it's the city charter. I now have to go in front of a district court judge and explain to the district court judge why I feel that the mayor of the city of Albuquerque should be recalled and get permission to go forward with the recall. That motion is being drafted as we speak. I will present that next week to a district court judge. If the district court judge gives permission to go ahead with the recall, which I can't see them not doing, then the city clerk will issue us official petitions, of which we need 23,500 registered city voters on those petitions, which means we probably need in the neighborhood of about 30,000. So, I believe this can be done. Once we turn those petitions in, we have enough, then a recall election will be held. With the passion that has come forward lately, I have been yelling about this. For those of you that don't know, I'm a retired APD sergeant, and I've been yelling about this for the past 5 years or more.
Thank you, sir.
And I've always felt like a voice in the wilderness. Now it looks to me like the city has woken up. The city has woken up and they're not going to stand for it anymore. So we have to keep the passion going. I am going to stay in close contact with Sue, all my gratitude in the world tour, because this is not an easy process. But it's going to take everybody in this room, your relatives, your friends, everybody else to go out and we need an army to go out and pound the pavement to get these signatures. And we can do it. So let's do it.
2 minutes, okay? So our timekeeper, are you actually keeping time there? Okay. Andrea, and then you're right here, and then Nora.
Okay, Paul, thank you for doing this. This is really, really important. If we're going to win this recall election, we need to get our ducks in the row, in the row first. And what that means is that if we need 30,000 signatures, we need 300 activists, each one to make a commitment to get 100 qualified registered voters each. So that gives you an idea as to the task that's laid out ahead of us. But we can do it with the emotion that this town now holds. We can recruit 300 activists each one to make that commitment. I will be one of them.
Thank you. Let me just add real quickly. Once we get the go-ahead, we only have 60 days to get the signatures. 60 days.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gary Hitana, and I am a survivor of police invasion of my home. I wasn't tased or phased or drugged or shot at, but I'll tell you, I was really damaged that night that they showed up. So that's why I'm involved here. One of the things I want to say to you is that police excessive force is not just an Albuquerque issue. We have made national and international news. So whatever decisions we make will be an international situation. So let's really do the smart thing and do it quickly. I'd like to tell you, for example, that in the Ukraine, they are now telling Jews to register or they'll throw them out of the country. How far away from that are we? Secondly, I'd like to say to you, how many of you have black friends or Native American friends? Where are they? Why aren't they here tonight? Surely, so they're scared, but you can still persuade one person to come with you to these meetings to let their presence be known. So I'm asking you to reach out to the black community and reach out to the Native community and try to get somebody here that can sit with us. Even if they haven't been victimized by the police department, they have a relative who has, trust me. Finally, I would like to say that I've been marching more years than I care to think about. And marching to closed buildings doesn't do it. So I would ask you to revise your street protest thinking. Half-naked playing bongos in the street is old school people. Let's use our technology, let's use the letters to the editor, let's use that kind of situation. If you must take to the streets, why don't we organize a 5K run like the Susan Komen breast cancer people do? We have a cancer here in the city, it's the police department. And if we get a 5K run out with thousands of people participating, somebody will pay attention. We can do a flash mob, just give me one more minute, a flash mob in the mall, get together and with our signs there. And last but not least, there's street theater, which also is a very viable tactic. Thank you.
I think you should sign up for the street protest tactic. You've got some really good ideas, especially the one about being naked. I'm sure the media
I
can
can
help
do that. My name is Nora, and I just want to tell you, going to the city clerk was a little scary for me. I thought maybe we should have had a media coverage, like a press conference, so that they wouldn't do anything to arrest us. I actually thought they might have arrested us. But the reason I'm really saying here is, they first had told us it was going to be 11,000. Then it went to 25,000. Then they had a version in the, what is it called, the paperwork, where they wouldn't give us a specific, I guess you would say a wording on what we needed to do exactly. They didn't tell us anything per se, they just gave us, so they're giving us a run around the block. And is it time? Sorry. And so, not only are we going to have to go a knocking and get signatures, we're going to have to go a knocking and get votes. We need to get the votes against Mayor Berry, and that's going to probably be the hardest part. And I think working on this is my honor to be side by side with Paul, because I feel Paul knows exactly what was wrong in the first place. He told Mayor Berry, don't keep, I was going to say Von Schultz, but excuse me, that's just kind of my way of saying it. Schultz was not the one that should have stayed here as long as he did. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up on this comment. This is a nationwide problem. We realize that, right? And I was really pleased that we got a message on our Facebook page last night from a woman in Seattle named Harriet. She's with a group called Mothers for Police Accountability in Seattle, and she says, how can we help? So I'm going to be talking with her tomorrow, but this is happening in other cities, and that's also a goal I have, is to try to get in touch with other cities, how they've handled the police brutality problem. So thank you very much.
Just let me say one last thing in closing. This recall has to succeed. The only way to kill a snake is to cut off the head. You get rid of the mayor, the chief of police is gone, the CAO, Perry, is gone, and all the cards crumble. We have to do this. Stay passionate, folks, and we'll get it done. Thank you.
All right, so we have 2 more people to hear speak on tactics. We are at 7:35, and we have a full agenda. So we're going to hear from 2 more people that want to speak on tactics. So if Desi Brown could come up, he's going to speak about reaching out to rank and file police. This is another strategy. So let's give Desi our attention for a minute.
Hi everybody, I'll try to keep it as short as I can, and bear with me for 2 minutes because this is actually kind of a controversial thing that most of you probably won't agree with initially. From a peace studies perspective, because that's where I'm coming from, I've started engaging in a campaign to find those good cops. The good cops that everybody else in the community says is out there. Some of you in this room say are out there, but where are they? They're silent. So, what I'm trying to engage in is a campaign to make some flyers that we put underneath windshield washers of the cop cars to hand out to police at the donut shops, to do whatever we're going to do, to say, hey, where's your morality? Where's your sense of ethics? When are you going to cross that thin blue line and expose the corruption that sits in the department next to you? So it's edgy. I get it that it's edgy. And I've actually been working with some people who are retired cops who say that there's a possibility that it might actually work. But I could use some help with that in terms of developing some strategies and things like that to quote, find the good cops. Maybe it's like a Where's Waldo sort of an exercise or something like that. But if anybody's interested in that, I don't have a big whiteboard thingy up there, but I'm going to be sitting over in this corner and you can come and talk to me. Or even easier, my email address is peace@unm.edu. I'm easy to find. Thank you.
Okay, if anybody wants to comment or anything, but please make sure you're clear raising your hand and try to make eye contact. Yeah. So, but let me just really quick, try to make eye contact with our stackers so that they can get you for sure.
Can I ask you a question? So, we have a whole list of people who didn't get to speak last time that are still on the staff list, and I see there's people very upset that they're not getting to speak. So how much time do we have for each tactic? And are people, this is supposed to be people addressing the speaker who's, right? So there's a question for the person who just presented their tactic, not a personal idea about something else. There's time for that in another section of the meeting, if we can get through the tactics, right? Right. So who has a question for the tactic? You have a question?
So that'll come later in the meeting.
Yeah. There's a whole choice for open speakers later. You have a question for the tactic? Yes. Okay. And you have a question for the tactic?
2 speakers back.
Okay.
And I did raise my hand, you did say,
Yeah, I know people get frustrated, but obviously we have a lot, and a lot of people that want to talk, and so unfortunately with 110 people, it's not going to happen. But some people have spoken, right? Okay, so people who have spoken.
Does one in the blue shirt come speak, and then you can speak afterwards with you?
I'm loud, it's okay. So the paragraph that you need, the attorney's input for the petition, is there some parameters that you're looking at for that?
And who's that question for?
The person who, Sue. Huh?
Okay, so question for Sue.
I just got the question. Sorry.
Great, Sue. Okay, Sue.
Sorry.
Repeat your question.
Sue, the attorney's input that you need for the paragraph that's going to be on the petition that we would be submitting or getting signatures on. You've got some very specific parameters for that, correct?
Well,
what it needs to
I need an attorney to help you with that, and I also...
Right, I understand that.
And now that I found out that Paul already went to city clerk, I want to see what he did too, and, make sure there's going to be a hearing where the mayor gets to present evidence, so it's got to be strong.
Right, I understand, yeah.
So I'm seeking attorney input on that. Are you an attorney?
Well, I'm trying to recruit here.
Okay, let's talk.
But because with the last couple of petitions that have gone around, like with the women's health and the minimum wage, there were several drafts that went through on that petition paragraph, the wording, because it has to be, like you mentioned, very specific.
It's gotta be precise, it's gotta be strong, and there should be one, not two. So
Right.
that we don't have to
The
have
short
15,000
answer.
here, 15,000 there, we want 30,000 on one. So sign up on that. Okay, thank you.
Right, anything like that you can sign up for and work on in the committees, that would be great. But if you have something specific that someone needs to respond to, please.
I just want to say I'm very frustrated that we're keeping off topic, so what winds up happening is we keep backing up and backing up and backing up. Whatever the speaker's saying, just address that. There's plenty of space and time at the end of the meeting so we can have discussions about anything and everything. And you can hear my frustration. So let me speak to Paul and Susan. I really strongly believe that a petition to recall the mayor is a great idea. Susan, she's not listening. However, we need to time it right, and you're absolutely, Susan, I'm talking to you, yes. I'm back here. It's absolutely imperative that just one petition goes out, that we dot all our I's, cross all our T's. There's a whole process that we have to go through, but there's also a timing involved. You have 60 days to get the petition signed, and after the hearing, right, and then after the petition signatures are accepted by the city clerk, then you've got, what, 75 days, I think? I don't know. I don't know that amount, but let's make sure that the timing is right, because we don't want to do it so that it falls in with the November 4th election, because that probably won't be a good thing.
We'll be in touch about all the restrictions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this, questions directly for Sue as one speaker, or this Desi? Is it a question, or is there, because there's going to be an open forum for people's comments, ideas, once we get through the tactics?
If there are comments for speakers.
I mean, it's a comment to Pam and Stu.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would just like everybody to keep in mind that this is not just a problem about who is in power. It's a systemic problem, it's a structural problem. It has to do more with like the inner workings of the state. It's not just individuals, it's not just Mayor Barry. And I find it really fascinating that the person that we have up here advocating for recalling Mayor Barry is the candidate who wanted more cops. And the person that he was running against, who is Pete Nelly, is the thug that was responsible for the nuisance abatement team. So even if we got Mayor Barry out of office, we still have horrible replacements for him.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next section. If no one's got anything directly for Desi.
Okay, so we're going to invite Joel up. We're going to be talking about street protests as a tactic. And again, people want to respond to that tactic, and definitely hearing comments before you.
Thank you, Saida. My name is Joel Gallegos. I'm with the Answer Coalition. We organized the first protest, the Tuesday protest that drew 1,000 people. And we'd like to say that the reason why we engage in street protest is because we actually don't have any confidence in elected officials. And that's because the people are the ones that draw power. The only reason there's been any sort of gains socially is because there have been masses of people mobilized in the streets to combat racism, to combat homophobia, to combat colonialism, to combat social inequality. And that's the only way that things are going to happen. Politicians don't just wake up one day to the next, enlightened, and very progressive thinking. It's this pressure that we put on them, and that's our tactic. But there are certain things that people need to understand is that, one protest, isn't going to be followed by another protest, and then that'll bring more people, and then another protest will bring even more people, and then more people. Eventually people get tired. It has to be a very concentrated sort of effort. And we saw a lot of energy out there, a lot of energy, and all of those protests had a whole lot of people behind them. And that's something that we support fully. All of those protests are really great, but we have to consult with the community so that they're much more better coordinated, so that there's people from the community represented. When we call a protest, we call a bunch of different groups. We try to reach as many groups as we possibly can from the community. And it might take one massive action in the future, a protest,
organized by people here in the community. A lot of times it's individuals outside of the community who are asking for these protests when they don't know the temperature here on the ground. And that's why we react. We react, anybody could have called a protest for Tuesday the way we did and would have drawn the same amount of people because the energy was there. And it's important to really keep that in mind. That's why we use protest as an action, because we realize that it's a platform, it's a forum, it's a way of engaging people in the community, giving them a voice so that we can talk about the deeper issues, not just the surface issues of police violence, but the issues of state repression, of racism. What we're fighting is racism. The sister over here, she was talking about how racial profiling is something that happens. And it also happens in poor communities, poor white communities. In poor white communities, those are the people who go to jail. Those are the people who are being arrested. Black people, people of color, Native Americans, those are the people who are being targeted, the homeless. And so it's the economically disadvantaged, and we want to work with everybody. Answer is totally willing to help out with these protests. We have experience with logistical issues of security, logistical issues of signage, outreach. We have teams of young people who can go out there and put up 1,000 flyers in the night. And that's why we reach out to the community so that we can recruit more people to help us in our efforts. And so if anybody has any questions about that, please go ahead and ask.
Okay, so she's first here? Yeah, down here, I see you. You guys are already on my list. David, you're full.
Right now, Twitter is going on about our meeting. You need to Twitter. You need to look up all the reporters and journalists, and you need to follow them, and you need to respond to them, because they all read each other's stuff. That's how they talk about us. Right now, Channel 4. This is what the grassroots effort to reform APD looks like. Folks meeting in a church. Yeah, all right. What happened this week that was a setback to this movement? Do you know? The flyers. The flyers. What is that called? Reverse propaganda. How did Hitler go to power? Using advertising, graffiti, and you name it. You need to get a PR guy, an advertising guy, to counteract every single act of reverse propaganda that the media will report, because the media's ear APD has. You got to keep us in the media, which is not easy. So, what was a poignant moment at the APD support meeting? Do you all remember? What was the most poignant meeting point that Saturday when they were in front and they were all supporting their honorable? Do you remember?
Please tell us.
The wife of the murdered, the fallen APD officer Mike King, killed by a schizophrenic. She got the heart, she got the gut, she got TV time and journal time. Lynette King. Well, that name rang a bell. On my son's murder thing and paper, that name, Mike King, was familiar. His honorable colleagues used his name falsely and to falsify an OMI death report 4 years after his death. That's why that name was familiar to me. So, do you think that the honorable APD she was speaking about would do this to her husband's name? No. So what you need to do is every time there's a reverse, you find a counter.
Hey, Joe. Okay.
No, go ahead and ask.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. A lot of people wouldn't know it, but that is a tactic, a protest tactic, is reaching out to the media, having a press release, and doing that sort of thing. That way we get our information out there first. And another protest tactic is, not bad-mouthing other people for their tactics just because you don't agree with them. If people want to go and graffiti a cop car. I mean, we don't agree with that. That's not something we would do. But the main focus is the police. We're fighting against the police. We're not fighting against, vandals. Who cares about them?
Okay, I'll be quick. So I'm saying this from a youth perspective. Like, one of the things that is disheartening me is that we don't see the youth that were on that protest on that Sunday here engaged. And so something that I want to work with Answer and other organizations and a lot of youth-oriented people is maybe having a forum like this, but with the youth who are at the protest and youth who want to continue to participate. Because, I honestly see that's where the energy is, right? The energy is with the youth who march and others who march 11 hours and got the attention of the world. So, I don't know, maybe we can talk after, but I know there are other organizers that aren't here today that actually wanted to start a youth forum, and maybe we can make it a collaborative community thing.
The only thing that I'd like to encourage is that the marches go to the disenfranchised neighborhoods. Let us take a march to the South Valley, to Rio Bravo and Esleda, because they need it there. They get beat up all the time. Let's take a march over on San Mateo and Central where the Native Americans get wiped out. I just want to see it. Let's go through the mall. By the time we go through the mall, they call the police, we'll be gone. But it doesn't mean that this young woman here who pays for her own flyers and posters, she runs around with us and gives flyers to people. I don't know who she is. Yeah, but she does it, yeah. There she is. There she is.
She'd like to talk. She'd like to talk. Okay.
Okay, you got it, Brett.
Sorry.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here tonight. I just want to say I think we all deserve a round of applause because in the middle of everything else we managed to come together and we'll continue to. And you're right, the more we all work together and really hone on having a concerted message, then I think we can really land some, we're starting to see the effect, and I think not just like having had everybody from the beginning years ago with Andres and Nora and everybody, and really adding the pressure, like what we find the point, and it's kind of like a form of martial art, like the smallest person can knock down the biggest person if they just know where to fucking land it, And I think that's what we're doing and finding and really driving it in. And like I said at the city council meeting, that I don't think, if the communities in Mexico that, we're often taught that we should look down upon, if those people aren't afraid, they have less resources, less rights, less anything, they're not afraid to take their communities back from the cartel. Not even the police, the cartel, who I think is a far more dangerous adversary. There's no reason why we should be afraid to take our city back from our own police, because at the end of the day, last I checked, this is our city, is it not? Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just briefly first thank the Answer Coalition for all the amazing work that you guys have done. And I want to just give everyone an update. There's been a lot of criticisms and complaints of all of our efforts as maybe we're not as well organized as we should be, and maybe we should do this, and this tactic is not ideal. And I would say this. First, a lot of the calls for protests and a lot of the calls for actions have come from people that don't live in Albuquerque. They call themselves anonymous. I have been trying to correspond with them and tell them to stop calling protests, but rather to wait for us to call them, and then they can publicize them, because they get a lot, so do that. I mean, I contact them through Twitter, I contact them through various means, and encourage them to stop calling these protests, because you're right. When you guys are organizing it, or groups are organizing it, we can turn it into something that's useful. Secondly, I want to point out here that there's a lot of instigation going on, and I don't know who's doing it. This happens to social movement organizations, but there have been these fake Facebook pages popping up and calling protests, and these fake Facebook posts coming up, and they're making these flyers that are violent. So let's just make sure that the press knows that there's no one among us that's doing this. These are instigators, and this is not what this movement is about.
We're running out of time, so we're just have these two more, and then we'll try to have an open thing so everyone can speak, okay?
So I'll make it quick. I say fuck the media. The media has never represented me as a mom, as a lesbian, as a Chicana, as as a member of a third party, this media is not my media, and it never has been. I think if you think that the media is yours, you are mistaken. So what I want to say is I support independent media, and I want to get that out there. I think that's our only hope as far as the media goes. I also want to say that Unoccupy is organizing for a youth forum on April 25th. Keep a track on our Facebook and website. We'll have the date and the time there. Invite those people that are ready to speak out and learn together. And I think that Adriana talking about folks in other countries is our example to follow.
I just wanted to back up this lady here that was talking about the instigation. When you ask yourself, who would know which of these police stations didn't have cameras, except for who? And who would have access to newspapers that are primarily sold out of machines? So, I believe that those two issues, those two instances were. Now, the other thing is, I know that Anonymous may or may not be from outside the city, but they did call a protest, which turned out to be the biggest one, and I think that was fine. I mean, it was a competition with what Answer's doing, and Answer's been doing a fine job. They started.
Not a competition.
However, this is. I don't see anything wrong with this anonymous group. Thanks.
So we're at 5 to 8, and I know that there are people who wanted to speak that didn't get to speak. But we do want to wrap up at 8. It doesn't mean you have to stop talking. The reason for those sign-up sheets is that people can talk after if you're passionate about one of these issues. Hopefully you signed them at the front too.
And there'll be more meetings, so don't feel like this is the last chance. It's just hard to get through everybody. We don't want to be here till 10 and break a record like City Council did. We can't do it.
So the last things on our agenda, we have a solidarity agreement and then our next step. So again, apologies to those of you who didn't get to speak. Thank you for everyone who listened to each other.
So one of the things that, and it still kind of leaks out in our conversations internally here, is this concept of solidarity, which means to work together and stand together and support one another. And what we think would be most useful is we do something that some of you have organized for a while, have heard before, right? If we're going to have any kind of tensions, we have those in the house. But when we go outside, we stand together. And so we do like, it doesn't mean that we have a false solidarity that we pretend we're on the same page with each other when we're not. But we save that for when we're in here, wherever here happens to be. But once we get back out on the street, or in the media, or on Facebook, or on Twitter, that we don't spend a lot of time trashing each other, calling each other names, that we save that for internal, that we work that out. Like I was talking earlier, that what's the conversation you can have with somebody that moves you forward together as opposed to drives us apart. So if that's something you can stand for, then please stand up now.
You're making an agreement to be in solidarity, so stand. Thank you. I'm glad to see we have consensus that we will not do those things. We'll be in solidarity. Okay. I want to acknowledge that Unoccupy Albuquerque has been the group behind these forums, has been the ones out in the streets organizing. So I really want to appreciate Unoccupy Albuquerque for all the work in the last 3 weeks. I also want to thank Mike, who's been videotaping, and Desi and Mike and Derek for helping with the sound so we can hear each other. And then as far as next steps, we know that people didn't get to talk that wanted to speak. We know we didn't get to everything on the agenda. So this is our third community forum that Unoccupy has organized. Do people want another forum to check back in. So make sure that you sign up on the sign-in sheet so that we know that. And then remember that this Monday is the city council meeting. It's at 5 o'clock at 1 Civic Plaza. Parking will be validated. You can park under the Civic Plaza. They'll validate your ticket. One of the things on the agenda, as we talked about earlier, was the Police Oversight Commission. You can sign up for 2 minutes to speak. If you get there by 5, you can do that. And so we need to get our talking points out. Ways that we can stay in contact with each other. The Unoccupied website is a place. On Facebook, we have Albuquerque PD in Crisis. It's pretty well updated. And I believe La Carita is going to put together something on their website that people can get information. Is that right, Derek? Or the website that you're working on? Is it La Carita? No. Oh, sorry.
It hasn't come quite up yet, but it was going to be APD protest at .wordpress.com. So
Okay,
that's
so-
the everything that's been going on.
So just if you need to find each other, we'll do that list, but those are places that you can look, and La Jicarita has a lot of up-to-date news. So those are some of our next steps, how to stay in contact. The street protest thing, one way we can get around outsiders calling is go with groups you know. So Unoccupy and Answer are two that have been doing a lot of the street protests, so you'll know if it's local, if you see that with those groups. Those are just two of the groups. But are there other things we need to know on how we can communicate with each other? Again, sign up today if you want to help with these strategies. Sign up if you just want general information. But is there any other way we need to communicate with each other so we can keep the pressure on? We really have the power right now, so I thank those of you who stayed till the end. Any final comments?
On Twitter, it's #APD protest, and you can get any updates on Twitter.
Hashtag Twitter, it's
Hashtag
APD protest if you're on Twitter. That's another place to get correct information.
And that's pound sign for anybody that's over 40.
Okay, well, this is beautiful to have such a participatory forum. So thank you everyone for listening, for speaking.